All right, ladies, let's go over the answers to homework number 16. These will be the last questions that will be on the quiz tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit about that at the end of this video. All right, so homework number 16, number 1. Who made up the largest group in Philadelphia, and who had they arrived with? I guess I should say with whom had they arrived. So the largest group in Philadelphia were the Quakers, the English and the Welsh Quakers, and they had actually come with William Penn when he arrived. To B, so what 4 other groups arrived later? So the English and Welsh Quakers came first, but later on there were Irish Catholics, there were German Lutherans, there were Jews, and there were free Africans. And so as you can tell, there were people from many different countries and many different religions. To A, give 4 reasons why these immigrants came to Philadelphia. The first reason was they were looking for refuge from war. Another was that they were looking for refuge from famine. Famine, of course, is when there's a shortage of food, either because of long periods of drought where there's no rain, or other famines that are caused by maybe diseases among the plants. Sometimes certain crops are wiped out by different diseases and even insects. And so finding refuge from war, finding refuge from famine, many of the immigrants were coming for religious freedom, and we've talked about that a couple of times now. And the 4th reason they came was because of all of the economic opportunities to make money, to advance yourself. Come to the new world and advance yourself. To B, so name 5 different types of skilled workers who set up shops in the city. Well, because we had people coming from all over the world, they brought all kinds of different skills. There were bakers, there were blacksmiths, there were butchers, carpenters, shoemakers, tailors, many others, but those were some of the ones listed in this chapter. So 3A, describe the tradition German farmers brought to Philadelphia. So this tradition was an interesting one, and it kind of built community in the German communities. It was called barn raising. And so what would happen is the farmer would prepare a frame of the barn, and he would invite his friends and neighbors and their families to come help raise the frame into place. And so building, actually it was a big work party. All the friends and neighbors would come help them build the barn, and then the farmer would have prepared a large meal for everyone to eat, to feed everyone. So it built community. 3B, what 2 inventions did the German immigrants also develop? So in addition to this tradition, they also brought some of their craft skills. One, some of them were very good at building weapons, and as a matter of fact, they developed this long-barreled rifle that was called the Pennsylvania rifle. And as it turns out, in the 1700s, it became the most accurate gun in the world. And so these German immigrants were very talented, very skillful. Another thing that they developed was the deep-bellied wagon. A very deep wagon, not just the short, flat wagons that had been around, but these deep-bellied wagons called the Conestoga. And these were mostly for carrying farm produce. You could fit a lot more produce in a Conestoga wagon. Number 4. What was the background of the immigrants who moved into the hilly frontier areas near the Appalachian Mountains? So in the book it tells us, in the chapter it tells us that Scotch-Irish settlers moved into this particular area near the Appalachian Mountains. So these were people who originally came from Scotland, but who had moved to Northern Ireland and then moved over to the New World for looking for opportunities for advancement and to practice their faith freely. 5A, give 5 examples, and we're moving into Benjamin Franklin. Give 5 examples of how Benjamin Franklin left his mark on Philadelphia. So as you can tell after reading this section on Benjamin Franklin, he was an extremely talented man. 5 examples of things that he did to leave his mark on Philadelphia, and these are just the first 5 they mentioned. First, he organized the first trained firefighting company. Before that, it was just kind of a let's throw water on the fire. After he organized that first trained firefighting company, things were a little more organized. He also introduced the first fire insurance company, so you could buy insurance that if you did have a fire, it would pay for the rebuilding of your building. He also organized that the streets were paved and lit at night. The 4th, he raised money to build the very first hospital in Philadelphia. And the 5th, he organized the militia, which was a volunteer army to protect the colonies from any outside forces. 5b, explain how Franklin's scientific work prevented many buildings from catching on fire. All right, so many of us have heard of Ben Franklin's famous experiment where, learning about electricity, he flew a kite with a key tied on the line in a thunderstorm. And he wanted to develop this idea that lightning was really a form of electricity. And he learned that by flying this kite in the thunderstorm. By learning this, he invented what's called a lightning rod, just a long metal rod that would be attached to a building, and if lightning struck it, it would send the electricity down into the ground rather than the wooden frame of most of those buildings in those days. In those days, if a building was struck by lightning, it would burst into flames just like a tree would today. And so that's how he prevented many buildings from catching on fire. 5c, what did Franklin establish to assist in the education of Philadelphians? Well, he established the first library where people could borrow books for a small fee. He was very interested in educating many people, and because not everyone had the money to own a number of books, a library was the way that people could share the books for a small fee. 5d, in what 2 ways did Franklin help to make Philadelphia a major publishing center? Well, first, as a printer, he started printing a newspaper, which was called the Pennsylvania Gazette. Just like newspapers today, this was where these ideas came from. He also printed something called Poor Richard's Almanac. We learn a little bit more about an almanac a little bit later here. 5e, what are 5 features of Franklin's Almanac? Well, an almanac is a book that was published every year, and it would have a calendar. It would have a yearly weather forecast, which would help the farmers to know when to plant crops. It also had stories, it had jokes, it had witty sayings. It's an interesting book, an almanac. And Ben Franklin was known for many aphorisms, these witty sayings, like the one that they gave in the book. You may have heard of it before. Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. And so that is it for homework 16. So between the answers to homework 15 and 16, which you have all the answers now, make sure you have all the correct answers so that when you take the quiz tomorrow on Friday, you'll be fully prepared. So I was toying with how I was going to set up this quiz. It's just going to be one part. It's still going to have 15 multiple choice questions, but it's only going to have one short essay question that you'll have to answer in complete sentences. So it's a little bit longer than either part that we've been doing these first several weeks of on distance learning, but it's only going to be one part, and you should still be able to do it in 20-25 minutes at the most, but it's only one part. So you'll get it all done tomorrow. Once you have all these corrections, you are good to go. So ladies, good luck on the quiz, and I will see you soon.